Welcome to the Abundantly More podcast. Hey, I'm Hannah Lynn Miller. I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about a fun topic, but not one that I feel like we talk about enough just in culture in general, and I'm hoping to, spread this out a little bit more, spread out the awareness and the importance of something called empathy. I want to talk about it today because I think that's really important. I had to do a deep dive on this topic when I've came across some conflicts in my interpersonal life, and I wanted to make sure that I was like, am I the problem, that I feel this way? And I think a lot of times when you are empathetic, it can be used against you. And so I think that is where I started to get curious about this thing called empathy and why some people have it and some people don't. And that's what we're going to tackle today. More of like, how can we all collectively understand and have more empathy for the people around us? I think that's just kind of where it is. It is something that can be traced in your brain. So it is chemical. And it is something that's important for connecting with others. It's important for conflict resolution, workplace, collaboration, creativity. There's so many things that go into the importance of empathy. And I think that's why it is good to just understand it. And sometimes too, like thinking, why is it that I have to talk about how I'm feeling with this specific person till I'm blue in the face? Because some people don't have a lot of empathy. And that is something that we need to try and understand just for, I think for emotional protection as well. A big thing that I love to tell clients or anyone who is starting to date, I always encourage them to kind of figure out, hey, how do they handle you telling them or talking to them about hard emotions, like first emotions? That's like the uncomfortable ones, right? So like secondary emotions are anger, anxiety, more like stress, shame, embarrassment, where like first emotions are, sadness, like anger that is more fully processed, I would say is a good way to put it. And those emotions that are just uncomfortable, like disappointment, like when you're disappointed and you tell that other person, how do they handle it, right? Can they empathize with you? They're not going through it. So are they going to be able to talk to you about it and like process it with you? So a little bit about empathy. It's the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It's the bridge that connects us. It's fostering compassion and kindness. And empathy is needed in so many places in life. I think about the healthcare system. There's journals and research and training to cultivate more empathy in these systems and practices in the medical field, which is so needed, right? For the mental health field, empathetic practitioners are a given. In the American Psychological Association, APA, created research around how important is empathy in leadership. This has been talked about a lot more since the pandemic. The results were consistent with claims that empathy has become more and more important, particularly in terms of a strong relationship with employee engagement since the onset of the pandemic. So that's definitely talking about in the workplace. Having that empathy in leadership is just more and more important. In more obvious places, empathy is needed for like healthy families, romantic relationships, hence why I always bring up for dating, look to see if that person's empathetic. Faith communities, friendship, and healthy workplaces. Another topic on empathy has to do with gender differences. I always talk about this because I didn't know this. Dr. Amen is someone who studies the brain, and he's very popular with celebrities and everything, but he is a neuroscientist, and he talks about empathy and the differences in gender. And so a lot of the times men tend to have more narcissistic tendencies because of lack of empathy because men tend to have less empathy in the brain than women, which is very interesting. Women just have more empathy. According to a study done by Cambridge University Press, it shows the differences. So you can look that up. I have it on the blog post that goes along with this podcast if you're curious, right? So here's just a little synopsis that I wrote about the differences in the study. 505 male and female adolescents aged between 13 and 16 years were evaluated at two different moments, grade 2 and grade 3. They completed this, obviously that's in like Europe, England. They completed the Index of Empathy for Children and Adolescents by Bryant and the Interpersonal Reactivity Index by Davis. The results confirm a greater empathetic response in females than in males of the same age. Doesn't mean, again, everyone can exercise more empathy. So it just means that men need to work harder at it and just be more aware of it. And women, we can just be aware of it and encourage them like, hey, listen, that was not very empathetic and I need you to grow in that area. Or just steer clear of people who are not emotionally intelligent and not able to work on growing empathy. Given the research indicated that men generally exhibit lower levels of empathy compared to women, it's crucial for men to be working on developing this essential skill. Growing empathy is not just about personal improvement. It's also about fostering better relationships, creating more inclusive environments, and contributing to a more compassionate society. By intentionally cultivating empathy, men can enhance their emotional intelligence, improve communication skills in both personal and professional settings, and have a deeper understanding of diverse perspectives. This growth can lead to stronger leadership skills, more fulfilling personal relationships, obviously, and a greater capacity to navigate social situations. Men can become more empathetic. They can serve as positive role models for younger generations, breaking down stereotypes about men and emotional expression. Ultimately, the journey towards greater empathy benefits not only the individual, but also his family, workplace, and community at large. Like, this is important, right? And that doesn't exclude the importance of women having empathy as well. That's just in the grand sense of the word in the studies, right? The main reason I would encourage an individual to grow and cultivate empathy is not because of all of the obvious pain that the lack of empathy can cause, but also the amount of connection that we can have with others through growing in empathy. It's just important, and it feels great to have empathy for others. Empathy is the ability to know what the other person has experienced, felt, and seen without it actually happening to you. And when you have empathy, you can feel what the other person's feeling without the words. It's a superpower to see others without the other person yelling, "See me." When you are a parent and you have empathy for others, that's an example that will impact generations. It's so important. Empathy as a friend allows for healing power of listening. Empathy in a newly married couple's relationship creates the ability to see the other person's point of view. Empathy for those in a new mom's community allows those in her life to see her and her needs, supporting her in the most vulnerable time of her life. Empathy creates connection between different cultures. Empathy in a husband's life allows him to see how much his wife may be suffering through postpartum depression, although this experience he will never personally suffer with, right? It's like so impactful. Empathy is a foundation of a healthy civilization, culture, and community. It's a strength that each individual should cultivate. Just like 4 things that empathy is a superpower in: it enhances the communication, emotional intelligence, encourages openness and connection, and it can also really help others through painful situations. So here are some strategies to help you cultivate more empathy. I think a major one is listen actively. So like listening actively. Truly listening to someone isn't just hearing about their words. It's also paying attention to emotions, body language, what they may not be saying. Actively listening means fully focusing on the speaker and avoiding distractions and responding appropriately, right? Put yourself in their shoes. So try to use some imagination on how the other person is feeling, consider their perspective and experiences. This doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but understanding where they're coming from can lead to more empathy. Practice mindfulness, definitely trying to be more present and aware and trying to be in the moment. When you're bouncing around thinking about everything else that you have to do, you're not thinking about the person right in front of you. Showing compassion, empathy often leads to compassion. So showing that you care by offering support, understanding, kindness when others are experiencing tough times. So don't run from when other people are having hard times. Like, try to stay present in the moment and asking, how can you show up for them? Educate yourself. Learning about other cultures, lifestyles, and experiences, this can really broaden your understanding and appreciation of diversity, and understanding that, like, this can really enhance empathy. It's understanding that, like, other people have different stories. I think the biggest thing that grew me and like understanding, well, obviously, I think when you're a therapist and you hear other people's stories, you just grow in so much empathy because people are being so real and so honest, and you can't help but love a person who's like in that space. So growing in empathy, I think being a therapist really helps, just hearing people's stories. But going to a different culture is really, I think it really broadens your empathy. I think going and traveling to different places, but also just going to different areas of your city, going to the countryside. Like, people have such different cultures and experiences. I mean, I think John and I like lived in such a diverse area that you couldn't not have empathy, or you just didn't make friends. Like, honestly, I mean, if you didn't have empathy and couldn't empathize with other people where we lived, I mean, I just didn't have a place to put a lot of what other people experienced and grew up when they lived on the south side or the west side, or even just growing up in the city as a kid. There's so many of my Young Life kids who grew up in the city, and like, I don't have a space for that. That wasn't my experience. I grew up on 7 acres out an hour outside of the city. Empathy is muscle-like. That's what I like to say. It gets stronger with practice, and be patient with yourself as you work on enhancing this skill. And it's going to take some intention. It's going to take some focus, right? It's a journey that can lead to deeper connections and more understanding of the world around you. Empathy and sympathy are both about caring for others, but they're a bit different. Empathy is when you truly understand and feel someone else's emotions, and it's like stepping into their shoes. And sympathy, on the other hand, is more about feeling sorry for the other person without necessarily feeling their emotions the same way they do. That is, I liked that description. It's from the Calm app. More tips: develop emotional intelligence. This is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. It plays a significant role in fostering empathy. Engage in volunteering activities. Ask for feedback. This is a good one. Next time you're connecting with someone, ask if they felt heard or listened to. Ask how you can do better. I think if your spouse could give you some insights, I think, why not ask? Be so curious. I love this. Curiosity is so key. Ask questions to understand people's experiences and thoughts better. It's not about being nosy, but about showing genuine interest in understanding others. Practice empathy in everyday situations. So try and do that every day, right? You don't have to wait for a crisis to practice empathy. Communicate empathetically. Use empathy in your communication, validating others' experiences, feelings, and showing understanding. This not only helps build stronger relationships, but it can also promote positive environments, work environments, family environments. Developing empathy takes time and cautious effort, but the benefits are worth it. Empathy has the power to heal relationships, bridge gaps, divides, and create a kinder world. And as you continue to grow and evolve let empathy be your guide. That is all on empathy. And I just want to say too that the amount of times that you can read the Bible and see how Jesus showed empathy, if we want to be more like Jesus, you got to have empathy, bro. I am so done with Christians who don't have empathy and cannot empathize with people. I don't understand. We need to be growing in this because it's damaging. It's so damaging to not have empathy. And another thing that wasn't put in this podcast episode that I'd love to talk about more is that the number one symptom of narcissists is a lack of empathy. So if they can't empathize, that's probably a big indicator that they have some narcissistic tendencies. And the thing about someone who is narcissist, I won't see them typically in a counseling session unless they are going to counseling because of a conflict in their marriage, and it's usually them thinking that the other person's the problem. So it's a really important thing to grow in empathy and just to be aware of those symptoms too. And I talk about this a lot when I talk about narcissism because that's the biggest indicator. So if you have empathy, that is you have such a big gift, and to be careful about other people using that gift against you is huge. I want to talk more about that, especially if you're highly sensitive person is a term that we use for someone who has a lot of empathy, and that person is so unique and so special, and a lot of times finds that empathy is used against them instead of them being able to use it as a superpower. So we can talk more about this, but let me know if this was helpful for you and what you think. And if you have someone in your life who needs to hear this episode, please give it a send. We are on Substack right now, and so there's a lot of content on Substack that I want to keep creating. And you can also find so many good resources on hannahlynnmiller.com that I want to provide for you. And also check out this blog post. It's about empathy, and it has all the information right there so that you can ingest it more, so that you can use it in your everyday life and just know more about empathy and what it looks like and the importance of it. So thanks again, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. I will see you in the next episode of Abundantly More.